Hello, everybody. Welcome in. It's July 7th, the final day of week 1 in July. You are here with Jane over at Blue Box 29. Welcome in to Folklore and Flourish. Today is July 7th, like I already said, and we're on the final day of the first gods. So this whole month is about the Titans and gods, gods and Titans, and the divine witness. Okay, so we are going to be looking at the final day of the first gods today. So with that in mind, we are on the wind gods. So our final day is focused on the wind gods. All of you that may be freaking out that the underworld wasn't talked about yet, it will be. But we are starting off with the wind gods first, and there's a reason for that. But the theme for today is movement and message. So movement and message. We have heard so many different stories where the wind is carrying messages from our ancestors, messages from the earth, how there are whispers in the wind, or that it's just a force to be really humbled by. But our lesson today is that breath is power. So we're going to see that through Greek, Japanese, Navajo, and Aztec folklore today. And we're going to think about what moves me. So what moves me? Think about that today. There could be so many different things, as simple as an action versus something that you see. Lots of different things that it could be. But what moves me? And if you'd like to, please share down below your answer. You can always do that on any of these. I would love to see some of those responses. And today, we're going to take 5 deep breaths and really pay attention to life entering us and the air filling us and then leaving without effort or command. So I know you're like, well, I have to exhale. That's some effort. Not really, because you'll breathe without really noticing it. Your body just does it. But you're going to intentionally take 5 deep breaths and just let it out. Don't take a whole bunch of effort. Just let it go. Okay. And then our final thought for today is that we are going to attend to the unseen force that carries us forward. So we're going to attend to that unseen force that is really carrying us forward as individuals, as partners, as family members, whatever it may be, and enjoy, I guess. Yeah, that is all that I have for you today for the July 7th. We are already at the final week of July. That is just absolutely bonkers to me. But we get to kick off tomorrow, July 8th. It's all about the divine kingdom. So week 2, we get to see those divine kingdoms, hence the underworld being there. And I'm excited. This has just been a very good month already. First good week. And tell me your thoughts. Were there any gods for the first gods that I missed that you would have liked to see in one of those days? I could always go back and add some stuff to those or do another episode on them. But thank you guys for all that you say and all that you do. And just for watching, please like, subscribe, comment. I'd love to hear from you guys. And thank you. Enjoy these 4 stories, and I will see you guys all tomorrow. See ya. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1. Boreas, Lord of the North Wind. Beyond the warm olive groves and the brilliant blue waters of ancient Greece, where the northern mountains disappeared beneath snow and ice, there dwelled Boreas, the mighty god of the north wind, whose arrival transformed gentle landscapes into realms of frost and roaring skies. He was one of the 4 great Anemoi, the divine wind gods who govern the cardinal directions, each carrying the changing seasons across the world at the command of the heavens. Yet among them all, Boreas was the fiercest. His breath swept over the mountains with the force of 1,000 charging horses, bending forests until ancient pines groaned, freezing rivers beneath crystal armor, and driving dark clouds before him like great armies crossing the sky. Sailors watched the northern horizon with equal measure of awe and fear, for they knew that Boreas could fill their sails with life-giving speed one moment, shatter their ships against hidden rocks the next. Farmers welcomed his winter winds, knowing they carried the cold that allowed the earth to rest before spring returned, while storytellers reminded children that even the harshest season served a purpose within nature's greater design. The Greeks understood that Boreas was never cruel simply for the sake of destruction. His storms cleared stagnant air, his cold preserved the balance of the seasons, and his relentless movement ensured that no corner of the earth remained unchanged forever. One of the most beloved legends tells how Boreas fell deeply in love with the Athenian princess, Eurythia, whose gentle words failed to win her heart. The impatient wind god swept down from the mountain in a roaring tempest, carrying her away to his northern kingdom where, in later tradition, they became the parents of children gifted with extraordinary speed and the power of flight. The tale reflected the ancient understanding that the wind itself cannot be held, bargained with, or restrained. It arrives according to its own nature, reshaping lives in ways both terrifying and transformative. To the Greeks, wind represented more than weather. It was movement itself, an invisible force reminding humanity that the world is never truly still. Every shifting cloud, every turning season, every migrating bird, and every ship carried across the sea revealed Boreas at work beyond mortal sight. Though people could not grasp the wind in their hands, they witnessed its power in everything it touched. Through Boreas, they learned the strongest forces in existence are often invisible, leaving behind only their unmistakable effects. His icy breath became a reminder that change often arrives without invitation. Yet the same wind that strips trees bare also prepares them for new life when spring returns. The north wind teaches that power is not measured by what can be seen, but by the quiet certainty that unseen forces are forever shaping the course of both the world and the human heart. Story 2, Fūjin, Keeper of the Heavenly Winds. Long before Japan's temples crowned mist-covered mountains, before cherry blossoms drifted upon spring breezes, and before fishing boats sailed the quiet waters surrounding the islands, the people looked toward the ever-changing skies and honored Fūjin, the ancient god who carried the winds of the world upon his shoulders. Often depicted as a wild green-skinned deity, clothed in animal skins and bearing an enormous stack from which every breeze, blaze, and tempest emerged, Fūjin embodied the invisible power that shaped both the beauty and the unpredictability of life itself. According to ancient tradition, he helped form the world after the heavenly realms were established, releasing the first great winds that cleared the dense mists blanketing the young earth so that sunlight could reach the land below. Without the movement of air, the world would have remained hidden beneath endless fog, its mountains unseen and its forests unable to breathe. Every season thereafter became part of the endless journey. Gentle spring breezes awakened blossoms from winter's sleep. Warm summer winds carried the scent of distant oceans. Autumn gusts scattered brilliant leaves across temple courtyards. And powerful typhoons reminded humanity that the same force capable of nurturing life could also reshape entire landscapes. Fūjin's most enduring companion was Raijin, the thunder god whose booming drums echoed across the heavens as lightning illuminated the storm-filled sky. Together, they became one of Japan's most recognizable divine pairings, appearing throughout centuries of art, temple gates, folding screens, and sacred stories as guardians of nature's tremendous power. Farmers welcomed Fūjin's seasonal winds to pollinate crops and carry life across the countryside, while sailors learned to respect the unseen currents that could either speed them safely home or carry them far beyond familiar shores. Unlike a ruler seated upon a distant throne, Fūjin never remained still. His presence could be felt wherever grasses bent together across open fields, wherever mountain passes sang beneath rushing air, wherever birds soared effortlessly upon invisible currents, and wherever children laughed as kites climbed into the endless blue sky. The Japanese recognized that wind itself could never be possessed. It belonged to no kingdom, no emperor, and no human hand. It traveled freely across forests, villages, mountains, and seas alike, touching every living thing without preference or distinction. Through Fūjin, they learned that movement is essential to life. Stagnant waters grow still, silent forests lose their song, and hearts that refuse change become like closed rooms without fresh air. Every breeze became a quiet reminder that the world is constantly in motion, carrying messages, seeds, clouds, birds, and dreams farther than anyone could imagine. Though unseen, the wind leaves unmistakable evidence wherever it passes, teaching that some of creation's greatest gifts are those we experience rather than those we can hold. Fujin reminds us that life itself is carried forward by movements beyond our control, inviting us not to resist every changing wind, but to trust that even unseen currents often guide us toward horizons we could never have reached on our own. Story 3: Nilch'i, the Holy Wind of Life. Long before roads crossed the mesas of the American Southwest, before sandstone cliffs glowed beneath the rising sun, and before generations gathered beside evening fires beneath endless stars, the Diné people understood that the greatest power in the world can neither be seen nor held. They called it Nilch'i, the holy wind, the sacred breath that moves through every living being and quietly binds all creation together. Unlike many traditions that imagine the wind as a single deity with a human form, Nilch'i is not simply a god who governs the air. Nilch'i is life itself moving through the world. It is the breath drawn into a newborn child, the whisper passing through Jupiter branches, the current lifting an eagle high above the desert canyons, and the invisible force that carries both thought and spirit within every living creature. According to Navajo tradition, life begins when holy wind enters the body, awakening not only the lungs but also the mind, the heart, and the spirit. Every inhale becomes a sacred gift received from creation, while every exhale returns a part of ourselves back into the living world. Because of this, breathing is never ordinary. It is an ongoing relationship between humanity and the Creator's living presence. The Diné recognize mountains stand because the wind has shaped them. Rivers change course because unseen currents guide them. And people endure because holy wind continues to move within them. Even silence is never truly empty, for it is filled with a gentle movement of Nilch'i passing through every stone, every tree, every animal, and every person beneath the wide desert sky. This understanding became inseparable from the Navajo way of seeking Hausho, the sacred state of beauty, balance, harmony, and right relationship with the world. When a person's thoughts, actions, and spirit fall into harmony with creation, holy wind flows freely, bringing peace not only to the individual, but to the entire community. To lose balance is not simply to become troubled. It is to forget the rhythm of the breath that has always sustained life. Elders taught children to listen carefully to the land, for the wind carries more than weather. It carries memory, wisdom, songs, prayers, and the voices of those who came before. Every breeze across the desert reminds the attentive heart that creation is constantly speaking to those willing to become still enough to hear it. Through Nilch'i, the Diné teach that the most powerful force in existence does not shout. It quietly fills every breath we take, sustaining life moment by moment without asking for recognition. We cannot own it, command it, or contain it. Yet without it, no story could ever be spoken, no prayer ever whispered, and no life ever awakened. Holy wind reminds us that our first breath was never ours alone. It was creation breathing life into us, inviting us to spend every breath that follows living in harmony with the world that gave it. Story 4: Ehe Kadal, the wind of creation. Long before the great temples of Tenochtitlan rose above the waters of Lake Texcoco, before the first maize fields stretched across the valleys of central Mexico, before humanity welcomed each new dawn beneath the brilliant sun, the Aztec people honored Ehecatl, the sacred god of wind whose invisible breath awakened the world itself. Often understood as an aspect of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, Ehecatl was not simply the ruler of moving air. He was the force that carried life into motion, the unseen current that stirred stillness into activity, transformed possibility into reality. The ancient stories tell that after the creation of the fifth sun, The heavens stood silent. Though the new sun had been born through the sacrifice of the gods, it remained motionless in the sky, unable to begin its journey across the heavens. The world waited in quiet anticipation, suspended between what had been created and what had truly come alive. It was then that Ehekatl swept across the cosmos, filling the universe with his mighty breath. His divine winds set the sun into motion, carrying the clouds across the sky, stirred the rivers into flowing streams, and awakened the rhythms that would sustain all life upon the earth. Without the wind, the sun could not travel. Without movement, time itself could not begin. Every sunrise thereafter became a living reminder of Ehekatl's sacred gift, for each new day depended upon the breath that first set creation in motion. The Aztecs also remembered Ehekatl as a compassionate guide who cleared pathways before the rains of Tlaloc, allowing life-giving storms to nourish the fields of maize upon which entire communities depended. Farmers looked to the changing winds with gratitude, knowing that the invisible currents above them carried both survival and hope. Unlike the violent storms that sometimes swept across the land, Ehekatl's greatest strength was not destruction, but movement itself. He reminded people that even the most beautiful creation cannot fulfill its purpose if it remains still. Birds require the wind to soar. Seeds depend upon the breeze to find new places to grow. And every spoken word begins with a single breath, leaving the lungs. Through Ehekatl, the Aztecs recognized that life is not measured merely by existence, but by the continual willingness to move forward with courage and purpose. His temples were often built with rounded shapes so that the wind could flow freely around them without obstruction, a beautiful reflection of the belief that life's greatest forces should never be imprisoned but welcome with openness and respect. Through the gentle whisper of morning breezes and the powerful gusts that announced approaching storms, generations remembered that the Creator's greatest gifts are often the ones we cannot see. Like breath itself, the wind continually moves through the world, quietly awakening what has been waiting to begin. Ehekatl reminds us that every new journey starts with a single breath. Every great change begins with a single moment, and every tomorrow arrives because something unseen first dared to set the world in motion. Daily thread for July 7th, the wind gods. Across frozen mountains, sacred shrines, desert mesas, and the ancient temples of Mesoamerica, today's stories remind us that the greatest forces in creation are often the ones we cannot see. The Greeks watched Boreas sweep across the land with the untamed power of the north wind, while Japan remembered Fūjin carrying the changing seasons within his great bag of winds. The Dene taught that Nilch'i, the holy wind, is a sacred breath that lives within every person, binding humanity to the earth and to one another. The Aztecs honored Ehekatl, whose divine breath set the sun into motion and awakened the rhythms of life itself. Though these traditions arose beneath different skies, they all recognize the same quiet truth. What is invisible is often what gives life its greatest strength. We cannot hold the wind in our hands, yet it carries seeds across mountains, fills the sails of wandering ships, lifts birds into the heavens, and carries the very breath that keeps us alive. Our ancestors understood the most powerful movements in life often begin silently, long before anyone notices the change they have already set into motion. A single breath becomes a spoken promise. A single whisper becomes a story passed through generations. A single act of courage becomes the beginning of a new future. As tonight's fire settles into glowing embers, take one slow breath and remember that every journey, every prayer, every song, and every story has always begun with the very same way. Before there was movement, there was breath. Before there was change, there was the courage to exhale into the unknown. May the winds remind you that even the smallest breath has the power to carry hope farther than you may ever know.